Good morning, everybody. It's Friday. Can you believe it's already Friday? I would like for you to open your spelling book to page 57, and let's look at exercise B. On exercise B, it asks you to write an original sentence using each of the following words. So you're going to use the words infinity, chafe, recess, morose, and depreciate. Remember to use the correct definition for recess, not recess like we go play outside. So remember to use the correct definition and then write a sentence with each of these vocabulary words. Also, kind of keep going over those because at some point we will be testing on some of these words. So make sure that you know the meaning of them. That's all that we're going to do in spelling today, other than read your poem again. So I'd like for you to continue reading that poem. Not going to ask you to memorize it, but I am going to ask you to read it, think about what it stands for, think about the situation that we're in, and pray for those people that are out there on the front lines that are helping everyone in our country. I think it's very applicable to the times that we're living in right now. So if you'll take out your Of Places book, there are a couple of poems that I want us to look at. On page 330, there's a poem called The Shell. Looks like this. So turn to page 330 and let's take a look at this poem. I want you to think about, as we're reading it, what do you think the theme of this poem is? What do you think the message that the writer, Amy Carmichael, is trying to get across? Over in the top, it tells us that she spent most of her life on the mission field and wrote many poems showing her desire to follow God's will and to grow spiritually. And so in this poem, she reminds us of a need that we have and a need that God can fulfill. So let's look at it and see what you think. Upon the sandy shore, an empty shell. Beyond the shell, infinity of sea. O Savior, I am like that empty shell. Thou art the sea to me. A sweeping wave rides up the shore, and lo, each dim recess the coiled shell within is searched, is filled to overflow by water crystalline. Not to the shell is any glory then. All glory give we to the glorious sea. And not to me is any glory when thou overflowest me. Sweep over me, thy shell, as low I lie. I yield me to the purpose of thy will. Sweep up, O conquering waves, and purify, and with thy fullness fill. So let's take a look at this poem. What do you think the theme of this poem would be? Think about it for a minute. If you came up with anything that resembles man's emptiness versus God's fulfillment, then you're right on target. It talks about how small we are and how great God is and how much we need God, just like this shell needs the sea. So let's look down at the think it through, and let's go through these three questions. According to the poem, what attributes of God are seen in the sea? So what do you see in the sea that is similar to what we see in God? Well, one of the things it talks about is that the the just vastness of the sea, the infiniteness of the sea, just like the infiniteness of God. That I mean, He's just huge and even greater than the sea. And compared to us, He's so much greater than us, just like the sea is so much greater than the shell. Also, there's the purity and the glory and power of God, just like there's glory and power in the sea. So that would be the answers to number one. Number two, to what is man compared? What is man compared to in this poem? Obviously the shell, right? And so what characteristics does man and the shell both have? Well, the shell is empty and frail and in need of cleansing by the sea. And so also we become empty and we need cleansing by God. we need, especially in these days, to look to God for wisdom, to look to God for peace and for comfort and for healing. Um, just just like that shell needs the ocean, we need God, especially in these times. And look at the third question. How is the relationship between the sea and the shell similar to the relationship between God and man? Well, I think we answered that a little bit about how we need God and how God fulfills so many things in our life, but also we have to recognize the relationship between the shell's size and the might and the significance to that of the sea. That parallels to our relationship to God. We're really small compared to his greatness, and we are really, really weak in comparison to his strength. So that's what this poem is all about. Well, flip over to the next page. We've got a different poem, and this one goes in another direction. This one is Clipper Ships and Captains. Now, if you remember in history, we studied about the types of ships that were used before some of the modern technology came into being. And so we know the clipper ships were one of those ships. And this author is writing about what a great time it was in the day of the clipper ship. So let's look at what it says in the little rectangle underneath the author's name. Clipper Ships and Captains provides a nostalgic look at New England's wooden ships and the brave men who sailed them. So if you remember from studying in history, we talked about how much of New England, their trade depended on the ships that sailed. And they sailed to many different ports, not just over to Europe, but to even ports in the colonies. So this poem kind of talks a little bit about what we studied about in history. So let's take a look at this poem. There was a time before our time, it will not come again, when the best ships still were wooden ships, but the men were iron men. From Stonington to Kennebunk, the Yankee hammers plied to build the clippers of the wave that were New England's pride. The flying cloud, the northern light, the sovereign of the seas, there was salt music in the blood that thought of names like these. Sea Witch, Red Jacket, Golden Age and Chariot of Fame. The whole world gaped to look at them before the steamships came. Their cargoes were of tea and gold, their bows a cutting blade, and on the poop the skippers walked, lords of the China trade. The skippers with the little beards in the New England drawl, who knew Hong Kong and Marblehead and the Pole Star over all. Stately as churches, swift as gulls, they trod the oceans then. No man had seen such ships before, and none will see again. Well, let's look, what do you think the theme of this was, the theme of this story? It's basically just looking back and talking about how grand these ships were and the people that sailed on them. Let's look at the think it through. What material were the clipper ships made of? Well, it says that they were made of wood. According to the poem, what cargo did the clipper ships carry? In stanza 5, it says that they carried tea and gold. Number 3, what type of ships replaced the clipper ships? Well, we know that from history too. That was the steamships, okay? Question number 4 says, why does this poem praise the ships of old? And would these clipper ships still be practical for use today? And explain your reason. Well, they were praised because of their beauty and their craftsmanship, because of their speed, as well as the charm of their names. But today, these ships would not be practical because they were just not built for modern technology. They were wooden, they were heavy, and they didn't have the motors that the ships have today. They weren't as large as the ships today, so they're much better. There's much better means of locomotion today than a clipper ship, excuse me, which is why they died out. And so the last question, let's look at the last one. What two similes are used in the last stanza? Well, we know a simile is a comparison that uses the words like or as. So what do you see in the last stanza, especially line 1? Two of them: stately as churches and swift as gulls. So they're comparing the clipper ships to the stateliness of the churches, and they're also comparing how fast they go to the seagulls and how fast that they move. So that would be the answers to think it through. All right, let's take out now your grammar book. And today we've talked about 2 poems. We saw 2 different types of poems, and you're actually going to learn about a different poem today, and you're going to get a chance to write one. So I want you to turn to page 226. On page 226, we're going to be looking at limericks. And a limerick, it says on page 226, is a funny poem that's believed to have originated in the country of Ireland. It's characterized by being short, bouncy, and fun, and many authors of limericks are unknown because the poems have been passed down by oral tradition for centuries, meaning that people just told the limericks. They didn't write them down. They just passed them down from one generation to the next. Well, let's look at this example here. There was a young fellow named Hall who fell in the spring and the fall. 'Twould have been a sad thing had he died in the spring, but he didn't. He died in the fall. Now, if you look at this one, this is talking about he fell in like a spring, not the season of spring, but a body of water. And so it's saying he fell in the spring and the fall. And it would have been sad if he died in the spring, but it said, no, he died in the fall. So it's kind of making a play on the seasons and the body of water. So let's look underneath it where it says a limerick has 5 lines and it has a distinct AABB rhyme pattern. And that means that the first and the second and the fifth lines rhyme, and the third and the fourth lines rhyme, but it also has a distinct rhythm and line length, which we're going to see on the next page. So you're going to write a limerick, and you're going to do what it says under plan. First, you choose a topic. They're usually humorous, and you can pick something fun. Now, folks, they need to be rated G, okay? We need to make sure that we are using appropriate words in our limericks. Just a little FYI for you. It needs to be rated G. So you're going to choose a topic, and then you can make a list of ideas and rhyming words. Well, then you start filling in your limerick graph, and you're going to have a graph on the next page that looks like this, and I've filled one in, and there's one up here for you. So you have to kind of count your syllables and make your words rhyme. Your first 2 lines and your last line rhyme, and then your third and fourth line need to rhyme. But you have to kind of count your syllables. So if you know how a line should start and what their end rhyme will be, then you fill in those boxes. And you can always start out with there once was. That's a really common way that limericks start out. So look at number 4. Then you evaluate your limerick, and you just kind of look at it. Y'all know how to do that. And then you edit it. You look at each word, and was there a word that you could add that could be more exact or more vivid? You can check a thesaurus for synonyms or a dictionary of rhyming words if you need some help. But turn the page to page 227. Here's a sample limerick. And I want you to notice on the chart, there's a box for each syllable that's going to be on that line. So you see, there once were 2 cats of Kilkenny, and you know, Kilkenny is just one word, but it's 3 syllables, so you have to put 1 syllable in each box. And then each thought that was 1 cat too many. Many is 1 word, but it's 2 syllables, so you have to put it in 2 boxes. So they started to fight, and started has to go in 2 boxes, started to fight, and to scratch and to bite. Now, instead of 2 cats, there aren't any. So you got instead has 2 syllables, so it has to go in 2. And you notice Kilkenny, many, and any all rhyme. And then you've got fight and bite rhyme. So you have to play with the words to make them work. And so let's look at exercise. You're going to use this grid to help you write your limerick, and you're going to put one syllable per box. And if you can't remember what a syllable is, put your chin under, or your hand underneath your chin, and every time your chin goes down, it's a syllable. So that will help you to remember that. And you make your stressed or accented syllable are in these little green boxes, the colored boxes. And you follow the AABBA rhyme scheme. And hopefully you'll do number 4 and have fun. So here's an example for you that I put in my boxes. I don't know if you can read it like this, but I'll read it to you. There once was a fellow named Crockett who liked to put stuff in his pocket. When the pocket had holes, the stuff fell to his toes. That habit, he now has to stop it. Okay, that's a limerick. And if you look at mine, Crockett, pocket, and it all rhyme. Holes and toes are close enough to rhyming. All right, so you're going to do yours in this chart. And remember that you only put one syllable in there. So think about it and see what you can come up with. The next one that we'll do is a totally different poem. We'll do that, I think on Monday, we'll be working on a didactic cinquain. But today I want you to write a limerick. I'm going to, in the next video, read the next few chapters of The Island of the Blue Dolphin. If you're reading it on your own, that's great. But very soon I will be posting a test probably on GroupMe so that you can copy it and you can do this. And it's an open book test. It'll be easy. It'll be on questions on what we've read so far. And you can do it on notebook paper. You can print it out on your printer and then just put it in the stack of things that you're working on to turn in. That will be when either we come back to school or we get a new assignment sheet, we'll be able to turn those sheets in. So keep everything that you're doing together and make sure your name is on it. Make sure that you have whatever assignment it is on there and the page number so that I'll be able to give you credit for everything that you're doing. I appreciate the fact that you are keeping up with your work. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I'll be back on Monday to go over next week's work. Have a great weekend.